Throughout the golden age of Hollywood, distribution companies would present their major productions alongside a B-movie, not unlike CDs and tapes having B-sides. This was done to attract more audiences to the movie theatre as they would get more for their money. There seems to be a consensus that if a film is tagged with being a B-movie, that it is somehow inferior, that it may not boast the same artistic merit or have the same production capabilities as more mainstream productions due to its budget or the talent of the cast and crew. One such film that stands above these characteristics is the 1945 crime drama Detour, which stars Tom Neal as Al Roberts and Ann Savage as Vera. The film was released through the Producers Releasing Corporation, a Poverty Row studio that ran from 1939 to 1946, and the direction of the film was helmed by auteur Edgar G. Ulmer, who began his career working alongside the likes of Fritz Lang and Billy Wilder before reaching his commercial peak when he directed the 1934 film The Black Cat. The film starred Boris Karloff and Bela Lugosi during the height of their success. Ulmer was able to create something tonally and visually more menacing than the other Universal horrors of the time, allowing it to stand alone against a slew of similarly themed films of the era and still be heavily regarded to this day. However, Ulmer's time at Universal was short-lived, as he was outed for having an affair with an executive's wife and was exiled from the Hollywood mainstream. His late 1930s saw him making fringe movies before signing with PRC. At the studio, he was able to find his niche for making dramas and thrillers with a quick turnaround and very little budget, which brings us to his preeminent work, Detour. The film follows Al Roberts, a New York-based club pianist attempting to get to his fiancée Sue, who lives in Hollywood, by hitchhiking across country. On his travels, he is picked up by Charles Haskell, who agrees to take him to Hollywood before passing out and cracking his head. Al hides Haskell's corpse and continues the trip. He soon runs into Vera and agrees to take her with him, but she is soon revealed to be Haskell's former passenger and blackmails him into schemes for her profit. Their relationship is ended when Vera calls the police on Al and accidentally strangles her with a phone cord. The film's protagonist, Al, appears to be more reactive than active throughout the story. He has very little power from the moment we are introduced to him in the club performing with Sue. She discloses to him that she is moving to Hollywood to pursue a show business career, and he is forced to stay behind. During this, he puts up little fight against her going. Many of his monologues on his trip discuss the lack of power he has due to his status and his financial situation. He discusses the idea of money.
Cross-country was to thumb rides. For even after hawking everything, I only had enough money to eat. Money. You know what that is. It's the stuff you never have enough of. Little green things with George Washington's picture that men slave for, commit crimes for, die for. It's the stuff that has caused more trouble in the world than anything else we ever invented, simply because there's too little of it. At least I had too little of it. So it was me for the thumb.
And the power the police have over a man like him.
But one thing I don't have to wonder about, I know. Someday a car will stop to pick me up that I never thumbed. Yes, fate, or some mysterious force, can put the finger on you or me for no good reason at all.
These internal dialogues are a window into Al's psyche, giving an image of how hollow and fragile people can be when they have nothing. The desperation, the fear, the anxiety, all strong elements of this flawed character. The idea of Al being powerless only heightened by the bleak ending of him being taken away by a highway patrol vehicle, with only his monologue about fate putting a finger on you audible. The fact that you cannot hear why the police are taking him in lends credence to his paranoid ramblings, as there could be any number of reasons for them taking him away. It could be the murders, but it could be vagrancy, or just a simple fact they wanted to. An interesting note on Al's character is that the only times he does take action are during situations that result in his circumstances getting worse, such as actively defying Vera, resulting in her death, and hiding Haskell's body after the accident, resulting in him running into Vera and her enacting her manipulative games upon him. If he remains reactive, he remains powerless, but if he acts, he only buries himself further, thus adding levity to Al's previous statement about fate being inevitable. The original script built on these ideas even more so, with Al being a promising young musical prodigy, but instead chooses to work in the club and loses this opportunity. There were also more fleshed out segments with Sue in the original script. There were sequences of her in Hollywood meeting with famous actors and producers with a subtle suggestion to sexual encounters and romantic engagements through the dialogue, which could play into these characters being perceived as powerless once again with Sue. She could have been interpreted as being coerced into these situations with the promise of a chance in Hollywood. It's interesting to note that the studio wanted these elements removed for the exact same reasons, which meant that they saw something similar when reading it. Although the film's theme of powerlessness is pertinent to viewers, it is not the most compelling aspect of the film. No, this credit goes to Anne Savage's portrayal of Vera. She is introduced in the second act and carries the movie from then on in. The sequence Al and the audience are introduced to Vera sums up her character perfectly. She's full of malice and hate, but somewhat desperate and meek at the same time. This can be inferred from her clothes, her stance, her makeup, and her hair. Everything about her tells a story. Furthermore, her mysteriousness in this scene towards Al dredges up feelings of fear and anxiety.
How far did you say you were going?
Los Angeles?
L.A.? L.A.'s good enough for me, mister.
That's what I was afraid of.
What'd you say?
Oh, nothing, just thinking out loud.
People get in trouble for doing that.
What's your name?
You can call me Vera if you like.
You live in Los Angeles?
No.
She is the literal personification of his paranoia. She takes this element one step further by lulling Al and simultaneously the audience in. As she feigns sleep, you begin to empathise with her situation, believing her demeanour to only be an outcome of what's happened to her previously. This sequence where she lashes out at Al still rattles me to this day due to the performance by Anne Savage.
Well, it was no business of mine.
Where did you leave his body? Where did you leave the owner of this car?
I also believe this scene elevates the film as it creates a discussion about the dynamics of power and adds another level to the controlling nature of fate, as discussed by Al previously. By Al running into the same woman who attacked Haskell earlier, it creates a paradox when discussing the American highway. On the one hand, it is so vast and never-ending, but on the other, it appears so small and interconnected. While on the topic of scale, it is interesting to note Al feels further away from Sue when he arrives in Hollywood than when he does travelling on the motorway due to the controlling presence of Vera and how she could impact on his future. If Vera turned him in, there would be nowhere he could run. Al is lost in a concrete jungle. Ultimately, what Vera as a character was able to bring to this film was a strong sense of threat for Al. She could control him and vindictively use him to get what she wants. But her legacy pushes beyond being the villainess. There is a reason she shares top billing when only being on the screen for 20 minutes, and that is down to the three-dimensionality of her character. For every scene in which she is presented as vindictive, there is a scene in which she lets her guard down, either to get intimate with Al or to share her motives. All she is after is a chance for a better life. Something that all of these characters strive for. Vera is truly a character that was before her time. I think that statement could be interpreted for the film as a whole. It is before its time. From the paranoid monologues of Al that echo through protagonists of 70s new wave cinema to the cinematography of the American highway, which have become a mainstay in movies today in creating tone and atmosphere, to Vera and her three-dimensional personality. A more contemporary script would hopefully have built on all the aspects that made her character work and shine a more sympathetic light on her. This film is copied time and time again in modern cinema using any of these elements. Even a 1992 remake of the same name starring Tom Neal's son was created, which followed more closely to the script. However, it was a poor adaptation of something I believe would be hard to improve upon. This film, like some of my previous reviews, is available to watch on YouTube. However, this is so important to me that I had to earn it. I had to know more about it. I mean, there's so much I didn't even mention, like the importance of the song I Can't Believe That You're in Love With Me plays into the theme of the narrative. It is a film that I can't recommend highly enough. Thanks for listening to me gush for so long.